Manufacturing is booming in Newark and other American cities after decades of decline. Newark has over 400 active factories within the city limits that employ over 10,000 people. 4 years ago, nobody knew this. Now a growing number of people know this. How did this happen in the middle of a recession? Well, as a manufacturer, I can't say it was anything that our industry did. I'm pretty sure it wasn't anything that our government did. And I don't think it was a wave of made in USA consumerism that pushed us over the edge. What happened was over the last 20 years, goods have been made overseas in the third world very, very cheaply on the backs of exploitation of labor and exploitation of the environment. The growth in manufacturing now is because both overseas and exploitation have become a lot more expensive and a lot less attractive. Activists did this. Labor activists did this, unions, worker rights coalitions, and environmental activists and buy local activists made this happen. They raised awareness, they localized supply chains, and they helped to impose regulations creatively. And as a result, we've seen what's going on in Newark right now. Made in USA has relatively become a bargain. Cities like Newark are reaping the benefits because we have an infrastructure in place, still from the 70s and before that. We have a lot of concentrated labor, and we are in the center of a transit hub. We have the ability to move people and goods around very quickly. We are within a day's drive of something like a third of the population. And what I want to do now is talk about my experiences running Unionwear, which is a manufacturer of baseball hats, bags like backpacks and garment bags, safety vests and scrubs. We manufacture everything from scratch right here in North Newark. We have about 110 union workers. We're 11 miles from Midtown Manhattan. We've been in business for 21 years. So we're a union shop. We're right in the shadow in New York City. In almost every product category of ours, we might be the most expensive place to make that product in the entire world. So how is it that over the last 4 or 5 years, we've grown by about 25% per year after about a decade of being flat? Well, we've narrowed it down to 5 areas. One is market forces, specifically understanding the market forces that are going on and being able to educate our clients about it. How is Obamacare going to affect domestic manufacturing? How is the legalization of immigration going to affect domestic manufacturing? What if China decides to float their currency against the United States? Is that going to make United States manufactured goods less expensive and more appealing to the rest of the world? Yes, we stay on top of these things and we make sure people know about it because changes in the economy happen right under people's noses and they don't even see it. Market selection is a big one. There are markets that want to buy local. There are markets that want to buy made in USA. It's more expensive to buy those things, but they're willing to pay a premium. Who are those people and how do we reach them? Product selection is an area that goes along with market selection. Now, someone might not be in a market that wants to buy made in USA, but they might want to be a product that might be less expensive to manufacture in the United States. So what are those products? Re-engineering is a big one because it's very different to manufacture a product where there's no regulation and people are paid 10 cents an hour and to manufacture it in an area where there's a lot of regulation and people make $10 to $15 an hour. You can bridge that gap through smart re-engineering. And finally, we take advantage of our geographic advantages. We play up how close we are to New York City and Newark Airport and Port Newark and millions of skilled laborers. So I'm going to declare right now, the era of cheap imports is over. It's dead. So what's happened as the price of imports increases is the premium paid for made in USA products shrinks. As that premium shrinks, it becomes less expensive for people to have standards or enforce standards that they already had. So what's happened and why the market has grown is there are a lot more people who are willing to pay 25% more for a product that's made green, made in USA, made union, than there were in 2008 when it might have been 200 or 300% more expensive for that same thing. And it is that big of a difference. So one reason for this is labor supply and demand. China has had decades of a one-child policy. Well, as a result, there are a lot fewer people entering their workforce now. And the people who are entering the workforce, they don't want to make the iPhone. They want to work for Apple. So as a result, there are not enough people working in these factories. When that happens, you have to pay people more to get them to work in manufacturing. As a result of people being paid more, there's now a consumer class in China and in India and in Pakistan. That's driving up the costs of goods. It's driving up the costs of gasoline, petroleum, which is making goods more expensive to ship to the United States. I put a slide up of the iPhone factory because that's an example of what has happened because of worker rights activists. When it was discovered all of the working violations at the Foxconn factory, where over 1 million people are employed, labor activists came in and negotiated a 40% wage increase, and they lowered the amount of hours they can work from 100 hours a week to 60 hours a week. They came in a year later and negotiated another 40% increase. You imagine what that does when 1 million people make that much more money and have to work that fewer hours? They have to scramble to find workers. That's why prices of imports are going up so much. And as a result of social media, the rest of the world's workers are finding out what's going on and realizing they don't have to work this way. So you're seeing the same sort of riots, protest strikes in Bangladesh and Pakistan. This has led to wage inflation of 25% to 30% a year. The response overseas has been to cut corners. Poison in pet food, poison in dog food, exploding tires, broken plane parts. That's led to more regulation, which has put more expense on goods that come in from overseas. Companies have moved their manufacturing to places that they thought were cheaper than China, like Bangladesh, but they didn't have the infrastructure, and it ended up being more expensive. You ended up with, month after month, factory fires and factory collapses, which led to more regulation and more expense. So who is buying made in USA now that that premium has shrunk? There are 5 different ways that people can say buy local, and these are the markets that we try to appeal to. Buy American. People buy American for economic reasons, they have standards like the US government, or they want consistent messaging like General Motors, who makes goods and they want to buy American goods because they're selling made in American. People want to buy union and support their fellow union workers. People want to buy fair labor. They don't want to buy goods that were made in a sweatshop. People want to buy eco-friendly, and people want to buy local. So some of the areas of where people want to buy American, I said US government, which makes up about 1/4 of our GDP. This is something that's relatively new, this enforcement of the government buying American-made goods. Another area is trade justice, and if you see the labels fair trade and sweat-free and living wage on goods, those are all ways of saying that these goods were made by workers who are not exploited. An example of someone who used to not buy products with these labels and is now is NPR. They would give away tote bags for memberships at the same time they were doing stories about sweatshops in China, but the tote bags were made in those sweatshops because they could get them for 25 cents a piece. Now it's costing them $2.50 a piece. They're going to spring for $3 a piece and buy something that's made in USA, and it basically costs less for them to put their money where their mouth is. The link between fair labor and local and eco-friendly is this. The closer production is to consumption, the less acceptable worker exploitation becomes. You don't want to buy a shirt from someone around the corner who you know is working for below minimum wage and maybe working 100 hours a week, but it's okay if it was around the world. Also, the more likely that goods are produced using your labor and environmental standards. The factories are operating under the same laws that you benefit from. Another area is product selection. So 2 examples of products that are less expensive to make domestically would be products that are big and bulky to ship and don't have a lot of labor, like this gigantic case right here that we make that didn't need to be made in USA, but it is, or bags using expensive materials. This bag has $40 in leather in it, but only maybe $8 in labor. In China, maybe you can get it made for $4. So at the end of the day, it's $48 versus $44. By the time you ship it here and add the duties on it, it's less expensive to make it in the United States. That's why I see a lot of goods with expensive materials made in countries that are more expensive than the United States, like Italy. So another area is small batch customization. There is a big overhead to making products overseas. You have to translate goods. You have to make technological packs. It's expensive to ship sampling back and forth. There are time zone considerations. So as a result, nobody wants to make 500 or 1,000 of something in China or Bangladesh. It's a lot less expensive to make it here. And finally, re-engineering is the area where we're able to close the gap through product design. When we get goods, a lot of times now people are reshoring goods. They'll send goods to us, and there's a bag that they had made in China and they want to get it made in the United States. And I'll say, if you want it made exactly this way, it's going to cost you $80 because there was no thought given to engineering of the product because labor was practically free over there. If you want it, we can redesign it. Your clients won't notice the difference. It'll be just as nice, and we can do it for $15. The other area is in lean manufacturing, and that is the concept where you can take people in a high-wage environment and train them to use all of their time to just add value to the product and not waste time doing things that the client doesn't pay for, like looking for a pair of scissors or waiting for a manager or walking from machine to machine. So finally, Newark is a place that is perfect for manufacturing for a number of different reasons. We've got a high concentration of skilled labor. We've got a well-developed infrastructure of manufacturing. There are a lot of other manufacturers here, which means that there's a market for mechanics and trucks and things where that might not exist in an economy where there's not a lot of manufacturers. We're close to the port. We've got Newark Airport here, and we've got access to everything. We have access to New York City. We've got capital, we've got marketing, we've got technological expertise, and we've got technological expertise right here in the city of Newark through our academic communities. There are other cities where this is happening. There's not a lot of rural areas where this is happening. So this is the time to take advantage of this once-in-a-generation opportunity where people are coming to Newark to get things manufactured. Thank you very much.